I'll share with you a quick thought about the Parsha. Obviously, Hashem had the option of saving Noach, right, and all the animals, in order to allow the world to become repopulated. Hashem could have done it in a million ways. There's a lot of miracles that Hashem could have done. Why did Hashem use to save Noach, Dafka, with the Teva, with the ark? It was a miracle anyway, to fit everything there that they should survive. The whole thing was a miracle. So what is Hashem telling us? Why is it that He chose to save Noach? And again, as I said, all the animals and so on, Dafka with the Teva. So there's a teaching from the Ishbitzer. Mordechai Yosef Ishbitz, he taught that the fact that Hashem saved Noach specifically in this way with the Teva is telling us a lesson whenever we find ourselves, in a mabul situation. In a mabul situation. A mabul doesn't necessarily have to be with the floodwaters. Anytime a person finds oneself in a difficult place, in a difficult experience again, whether it be physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. So what do you do when you're bombarded by destructive waters? So said the Ishbitzer, what Hashem is telling Noach, when He's telling each and every one of us, is that there is an eitzah, there is a piece of advice, which is to escape. To escape. To escape. And that's what the Teva was, if you think about it. It was a little bit of an oasis. It was a little place amongst all the chaos that was going around the world, around that part. The Teva was a little bubble where everything's okay. A little bubble where everything's okay. And the Ishbitzer said what Hashem is telling Noach, and He's telling each and every one of us, is that a person has to be able to find that in their life as well. That even though they could be in a situation where b'derech klal, everything is falling apart, on whatever level, but a person has to be able to find some place to escape to, some place. Well, I'll give a few examples of what I mean by that. But a bubble, an oasis, an ability to escape the chaos of what's going on in their lives, to be able to go to a safe place. Now, let me explain a little bit of what that means practically, because I want this to be practical. There's a concept in the Sfarim, this goes back to Avram Avinu himself, actually, that any idea that we have in Torah, you should be able to see it expressed in three different ways. Olam, Shana, and Nefesh. In place, in time, and in the soul, in the person himself. Right? Those are the three different dimensions that you should always be able to find. You should always be able to find any particular idea. So let's talk about this idea of the Teva, of where a person should look at least to find an oasis, some place to escape to, a safe place, some place that's not under attack of the mabul. Let's see that in place, time, and in the person himself. An example of time. Hashem gave us a particular time where the entire function of that particular time that we experience, its whole essence, is a time in which we go back to a place which is safe and good and holy. And that's Shabbos. What's the end of Shabbos? So you have 6 days of the week. 6 days of the week, it could be a mabul. It can be a mabul. A person could be in upheaval. It could be in business. It can be, spiritually speaking, it can be all sorts of stresses in life, 6 days of the week. Come Shabbos, the sun sets on Friday. Chazal say the halach of Shabbos is what? One of the most important halachas is Ki'ilu malachtecha asuya. Everything's done. A second before Shabbos, the stress is up to here. Come Shabbos, the avodah of a Jew on Shabbos is to pretend as if it's all taken care of. To go back, to put yourself in a space, in time, during that 24 hours, 25 hours of Shabbos, you go into a headspace where everything is fine. You make for yourself a little bit of an oasis. That's what Shabbos is. If you think about it, that when in Parshas Bereishis, right, where Hashem describes that first Shabbos, it's unbelievable. That first Shabbos is described with such a blissful tone. Hashem said everything was good. It's gevaldik. It's gevaldik. That Shabbos was moments after one of the worst sins of all time. Right? Adam and Chava eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The whole universe is plummeted into destruction, death. It's terrible. All of a sudden comes Friday night. The sun sets, a few minutes later. Everything's gevaldik. What happened to all the turmoil of Friday afternoon? The answer is that's the whole point of Shabbos. The point of Shabbos is that whatever happened during the week, it's done. It's done. You'll go back to it. I'm not saying Shabbos. You'll go back to it. But for that day, you've escaped. The Baal Shem Tov, he had a custom that he would eat. It's a famous thing that he would eat farfel Friday night. Friday night he would eat farfel. Like why? Why he just liked farfel? So he said the reason why I eat farfel is because the word farfel is connected with the word farfallen. Farfallen in Yiddish means it's done. It's done, finished. So he said eat farfel Friday night to remind you that whatever happened during the week, it's already done. It's farfallen, and you move weiter. You go on. That's Shabbos. Shabbos, in other words, Shabbos is the Tevas Noach, is the Ark of Noach in time. Where's an example of the Teva in space, in physical place? What's a place on earth that we go to that its function is for us to escape to? It's an escape hatch. It's a bubble. It's an oasis. That's the shul. The shul. Every shul and every beis medrash you go to. You know, it's an interesting thing. It's brought down in halacha that before you go to shul in the morning, right, you say matovu, right? Matovu. You say that line, matovu ohalech Yaakov. How good are your tents, the Jewish people? It's referring to a shul. Matovu ohalech Yaakov. The Sfarim say what it means is also, it's not just like a nice praise. It's trying to get you in the right mindset. What it's saying is that when you walk into shul, as you walk towards shul, you come with a lot of baggage. You come with a lot of baggage, a lot of history, a lot of stuff, a lot of stresses. You come into shul, all you come into shul with is Matov Olach Yaakov, only good. The shul is a place, it's a place on earth where that is your Tevas Nach, that's your oasis. And for that X amount of time that you're in shul, as if everything's done. And you don't allow the stresses of before shul and after shul to affect you at that time. Just like the Teva of Noach, right, had to be sealed off completely. It was completely sealed off. Maybe it had a window, possibly. According to some opinions, it didn't even have a window. Completely sealed off. That's the experience of a shul. The problem is when people go to shul, right, they carry with them all their own personal baggage and all the stuff that they're dealing with before they go to shul, or they carry with them all their stuff into Shabbos. The whole Shabbos is, the waters of the Mabul have now entered into the Teva. The experience of shul is destroyed by that. So there's the Teva of Noach, there's the Ark of Noach in time, that is Shabbos. You have the Teva of Noach in space, in physical place, that's called the shul. And then you also have the Teva of Noach in terms of our human experiences. What's a human experience that we do that is in the person, the Teva? So there's a teaching from the Baal Shem Tov that the word Teva means an ark, but the word Teva in Hebrew also means a word. The Baal Shem Tov said that when Hashem said to Noach, Ba'ata v'chol beischel Teva, you and your whole family go into the Teva, go into the ark, on a deeper level, and what Hashem is telling each and every one of us is every time you open a siddur or you open a sefer, and you engage in words of davening and words of learning, what you're doing is go completely into those words. Whenever you learn, every time that a human being, that a Jew learns, it doesn't matter what you're learning. It can be Chumash, Gemara, it doesn't make a difference, whatever you're learning. But that's an oasis, that's a bubble. That's a bubble. It doesn't matter what happened before Seder, before the Shir, before the learning, and it doesn't matter what's going to happen after. During that time, you're creating for yourself a little bit of a teva. That's the teva that we create ourselves, within ourselves, the words that we say in davening and learning. Let me share with you a medrash. A medrash sort of like says this very, very strongly. There's a medrash Tanad Ve'Eliyahu. It's a medrash, a collection of teachings from Eliyahu Navi. So Eliyahu Navi said like this: Kishem sheyesh la'Hakadosh Baruch Hu chedrei chadarim b'terasai. Just as Hashem has hidden places that He goes to, so to speak, when He needs to get away, right? He has hidden places, hidden chambers, whatever. Kach yesh lo talmidei chachamim. So too said Eliyahu Navi, every Talmid Chacham, every Jew, also has to have an inner chamber to escape to. And that's what Torah learning is supposed to be. Whenever you learn, whenever you go to a shir, you mentally escape from whatever has been bothering you before or after. You find for yourself chedrei chadarim, a chamber within a chamber, an inner sanctuary. That's what the experience of davening and learning is supposed to be. And said Eliyahu Navi, if you find yourself being attacked from suffering and all difficulty and stress, so he said Eliyahu Navi, if that happens, then roitz l'chedri divrei Torah, then quickly run into that oasis, into that sanctuary. Umiyad yusar baruch mimcha, and then you'll find the suffering will just wait outside the door. And maybe even when you come out of the door and you face it head on, you'll have the strength to deal with it better. These are the three tevas, the three oases that we have to experience. And again, in time, that's Shabbos. In place, it's a shul. And in experience, it's words of davening and learning. Now, there's one particular mitzvah, okay? There's one particular mitzvah that sort of embodies this entire concept, right? And that is a mitzvah that we do all the time. Probably most of us are fulfilling it right now, which is the mitzvah of tzitzis. Mitzvah of tzitzis. You know, tzitzis, the halach is that any time you wear an article of clothing that has four corners on it, you have to put tzitzis on. Now, the truth is the way to fulfill that mitzvah the best is by wearing a talis, right? That you completely wrap yourself in. Listen to how Rav Tzadok HaKohen of Lublin explains the concept of that mitzvah of tzitzis. He says like this: mitzvah tzitzis, the concept of tzitzis is lahalbish ulachasais kol hamumin shabagov. It's a way of hiding all sorts of stains and blemishes that you might have. So a guy, comes to shul, right, and he, looks down, realizes he has a big blueberry stain, like in the middle of his shirt. And that's what do you do now, right? So you take a big talus, you know what I mean, and you wrap yourself over something you're very from, right? It's over your head constantly. It's like you're completely wrapped in the talus. It's a way of hiding all sorts of blemishes and all sorts of stains from other people. Now, but says Rav Tzadok, by the way, it's not just from other people. He says, "Aidei kisui tzitzis," by the covering of the tzitzis, by wearing a talus, by putting on tzitzis, nichsis af me'enei atzmai. The main intention, the main function of the mitzvah of tzitzis is that you put on the talus, you put on tzitzis, and you're saying to yourself, while I'm wrapped up with the talus, I'm not even seeing my own stains. For that time being, you're a malach. And Chazal even describe a person wearing tzitzis and wearing a talus as if they're an angel. It's an angel-like look, the white, the purity of it. So it's an interesting thing. The guy, before he goes to shul, is doing all sorts of stuff. He's not a malach, right? He comes to shul, puts on a talus, mamash like an angel. That's exactly the point. The point of tzitzis is to create an oasis in your own mind. It's to allow yourself for that time to be completely, to escape all the blemishes that you even have within yourself. This is why it's an amazing thing. The truth is, in the Parsha, we have a connection between Noach and tzitzis. If you think about it, after the whole story with the flood, right? So what happens? So it says in Pasuk that Noach leaves the ark, plants a vineyard, it produces wine and gets drunk, and he's exposed, in his tent, and he's drunk. The Pasuk says that his sons, Shem and Yafes, they took a blanket, right, a simla, they took a blanket or a sheet, and respectfully covered their father. Rashi says from Chazal, in reward for the fact that Shem, was the one that had this idea of covering their father in a respectful way, his descendants, the Jewish people, were given the mitzvah of tzitzis. So you see, the mitzvah of tzitzis is connected with Noach. What's the connection between Noach and tzitzis? Well, the answer is who Noach was, what he's famous for is the ark, is the teva. And that's exactly what tzitzis is. The whole concept of tzitzis is a mitzvah which embodies this idea of a Jew finding oneself, having the strength to escape from whatever problems are bombarded, whatever marbles is trying to destroy you. This is, by the way, just an interesting thing. This is also why we find a connection between tzitzis and all those three different types of tevas that I talked about before. I'll give you an example. The teva, the ark in time. What was the ark in time? It was Shabbos, right? The Gemara says that the custom of the tzaddikim in the Gemara, and even some like Rebbes do this now also, is that Friday night to greet Shabbos, they would go out to the fields wearing a talus at night, which is usually not done, right? You only wear a talus during the day usually, but they specifically Friday night would go out to the fields to likra Shabbos, to greet the kala, the bride of Shabbos, dafka wearing a talus. What's the connection between wearing a talus tzitzis and Shabbos? Well, that's the point. The chazan also, right? Even Friday night, even in shuls where they don't wear a talus Friday night, usually Ma'ariv, Friday night they do very often, right? The reason is, again, this idea. Because Shabbos is an oasis in time. And to get us to realize that, so we connect it with tzitzis. Because tzitzis is the mitzvah that embodies this idea. Another connection, by the way, It's interesting. You could theoretically put on a talis right now. I mean, there's nothing stopping you. But it's interesting. The custom of the Jewish people is dafka to wear a talis when you daven, shachris. That's interesting. The way the Rambam puts it, just read a couple lines. The Rambam says, "Ubishas tefillah," during davening, shachris, tzarich liyizar bar b'yos. You have to be more careful than usual to wear tzitzis by davening. What's the connection between davening and tzitzis? Well, the answer is again, davening is the oasis that we create for ourselves, the words of davening, the teva, the words of davening. And so therefore, as there also you have to wear tzitzis, which is a mitzvah that embodies that idea. The final teva that we create in space was what? Was a shul, right? So we have Sfardim. We have some Sfardim here. Achenu b'nei Sfard, a little bit. No, only Ashkenazim. Baruch Hashem. Okay. So it says in Shulchan Aruch. You have Sfardim also. Okay, it's good to have some Sfardim. Otherwise, if there would be no Sfardim, I would have to talk to the Charles and Ray to figure something out. It's not good. We need to be well represented. So listen to what the Shulchan Aruch says about the order of the day in the morning. It says in Shulchan Aruch that when you wake up, you get dressed, whatever it is, you put on your tefillin. You put on your tzitzis as part of when you get dressed, your talis cotton. You wear tefillin. V'yelech lovash b'tzitzis u'muchter b'tefillin. You walk to shul with your tzitzis underneath and wearing tefillin. Okay, l'beis haknesses to shul. V'sham yisati b'talis gadol. But be careful to put on the big talis davka in shul. Such a thing. That's how the mechaber. That's how the Beis Yosef holds. That's not the custom nowadays, even among Sfardim, but that's how the Shulchan Aruch passes. The Shulchan Aruch says again, where should you you could put tefillin on at home. But where should you put your talis gadol on? Where should you put your talis on? Dafka in shul. So what's the connection between the talis and shul? He says again, the shul is the teva, that's the ark, that's the oasis in space. And every time you're building an oasis, again, whether it be in time, Shabbos, whether it be within yourself, the words of davening, or whether it be in space, a shul, you always find tzitzis there. You always find tzitzis there, because that's the essence of the mitzvah of tzitzis, is to be able to allow yourself mentally to be disguised, to hide from yourself and from others any blueberry stains that you find on your shirt. That's the idea of tzitzis. So this week's Parshas Noach, this is the main lesson that, for us, I think we have to take away from, is that to escape, and to be able to strengthen this quality within ourselves of building this teva. Again, these three examples. Every Shabbos, to think of Shabbos in that way, right? To think of going to shul in that way, and to think of learning and davening in that way. And every time you put on tzitzis, to think of it in that way. That for that time, for those experiences, you're a tzaddik, and you're a malach. What happens before, what happens after? At that time, you're building a little sanctuary for yourself. So Hashem should help. We should be zeicha to escape to those sanctuaries. And we should be proud of what we're experiencing in that sanctuary, and we should be strengthened by that to be able to come out and face the waters of the Mabul head on.
Thank you, Hashem.